we have Corinne Lea. Now, she is going to be talking about BC liquor laws and fighting them. We all want a bit more freedom with the liquor laws in BC, and she's also the founder and CEO of the Rio Theatre. So please welcome Corinne on stage.
Hello. Just gonna put my water down. Hi there. Many of you may have already heard about the Rio's big fight with the liquor board. Basically, I'll give you a little introduction for those of you who don't know, and even people who've heard of it. A lot of people are still confused. I bump into people every now and then at the liquor store or wherever when I'm getting my liquor order, and they'll say, "Oh, are you guys still open? I thought you were shut down by the government." And the absolute opposite is the case. We're very successfully thriving, and it's all because we were able to change the liquor laws. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that process, what I learned, and what I think should happen in the future, and how it relates to arts and culture. So basically, when we first started the Rio, we had our dreams of running a venue, and then shortly after that, the crisis in the industry happened, where a lot of theaters, as you know, started to shut down. Like, we lost the Ridge, we lost the Hollywood. People were really sad about that because independent theaters mean something to the community. They're more than just the cineplexes where you can just come and see, the big, latest blockbuster. Independent theaters are a place where you can see independent film. They're usually locally in your neighborhood. You can walk to them and enjoy, seeing other people in your community. Also, we wanted to do live shows as well as movies. But the problem that we had, of course, was we didn't have a liquor license. And most venues and most arts and culture events make their living off of alcohol sales. Sorry to burst anybody's bubble that you could just make a living purely off art, but no, it's booze that generates everything. Woohoo! You could question that, but it's like, well, you know what? There's the art of wine, and there's the art of alcohol, and all of it combined, traditionally throughout history has made it so. So I'm not here to, argue that one. Anyways, so long story short, we applied to get our liquor license, took about 15 months, spent a ton of money, and then the day I got it, we were so excited, we were so thrilled. They said, okay, now that you've got it, you're not allowed to show movies of any kind at any time. And they actually made me sign this document in 2012. I was literally banned from showing movies. And I honestly saved that document because I thought, this is this kind of power that a government could tell a free person in a free country like Canada in 2012 that they can't show movies of any kind at any time, something didn't sit right with me. Let alone it was devastating to my business. I had film festivals booked. We had, we book things months in advance. And I was literally signing something that was going to cancel my programming for the next few months, could potentially put me out of business. I'd have to lay off staff. I was terrified. So thus begun the fight. I have a short little video that we made at the time that I'm going to play for you guys, because I feel the thing that's great about this video is it actually, and I have to almost not watch it because it actually makes me emotional, because it brings me back to the time where we were so desperate and our backs up against the wall, gonna lose my business, lose the Rio. And it was the fight of my life. We made protest signs. I was up every morning, late up every night, doing everything we possibly could. The community really helped to support us. And I feel like this illustrates the fight as better than I can explain it. And then I'll talk a little bit about what I learned after this. So if we can cue that.
Movies at the Rio have been banned since it received a liquor license for live events from the LCLB on January 18th. If you don't know the whole story, you can find out about it here, or here. The situation at the Rio is urgent, part of a larger crisis in arts and culture in Vancouver and across the province. While independent movie theaters are vanishing, the Rio has a successful business model that will keep its 74-year-old doors open. But that model depends in part on movies. Movies alone are no longer enough to keep the Rio afloat, so the Rio added live events. This diversified model was a success. The Rio already had a state-of-the-art projector. It invested in sound and lights and became a great space we could walk to in our neighborhood to see live events and watch a variety of film programming. But there was a catch. To get live event bookings, the Rio needed to have bar service, like other venues can offer. The LCLB said it would give the Rio a liquor license for live events, but there would be no flexibility to close the bar and show movies. Because the Rio could not survive on movies alone and had invested the last of its resources in the liquor license application, which took 15 months and cost $15,000, it had no choice but to proceed with the liquor license and keep lobbying for movies. The general manager had the statutory authority to allow this kind of model, to look at the Rio's unique situation and use her discretion to allow it. She was pointing rigidly to archaic policy and red tape and refusing to budge. The Rio's best bet was to take the license and abide by it, which it has done, and keep lobbying for movies. The LCLB didn't like that. To shut down the discussion, the general manager of the LCLB inserted a special condition into the Rio's license. It became the only venue in the province of BC not allowed to show any type of movie or cinematic screenings at any time. That's when the fight back started. The more the LCLB and the provincial government ignored our concerns, the louder the community got. During this time, the Rio has had to lay off staff, lost tens of thousands of dollars in film programming, and festivals important to our community have had to go elsewhere. So we've been forced to take a close look again at who in government is actively working to lift the ban and save the Rio, and who is not. The MLA for our community, Jenny Kwan, has been working tirelessly to fight the ban on movies at the Rio. The City of Vancouver has been helping. They supported the Rio's bid for the liquor license with the right to show movies. And when the LCLB banned movies at the Rio, City Council passed a motion calling on the provincial government to lift the ban. The LCLB ignored the motion from the City of Vancouver and is now threatening to revoke the Rio's license if it keeps asking for movies. Since the tribunal that heard policy decision appeals was removed in 2002, the LCLB is not required to defend its policy decisions to anyone. Many license holders are afraid to argue with them, and you almost never hear these businesses' stories, because the LCLB can destroy your business, and if they do penalize you, your only right of appeal is too expensive for most, or an internal penalty hearing that is absurdly unfair. Only the minister responsible for the LCLB is in a position to step in and have the general manager listen to reason. The minister at the time told the media she would not get involved. But weeks into the ban on movies, the premier gave liquor control to Rich Coleman. We found out right away he would help. On his first day on the job, the condition on the Rio's license banning movies was lifted. Rio supporters celebrated, and this coalition was about to send our thanks to him. But on the same day, the LCLB announced new red tape that effectively rebanned movies at the Rio. The LCLB did this by interpreting its new legislation to effectively strip live event venues like the Rio of their existing rights to show movies. The Rio again can't show movies, even without bar service, in the evenings, which is when most people want to see a movie. And in effect, the Rio and other arts and culture venues now have fewer opportunities to show films than they did before. In the same policy directive, the LCLB did something else. It stripped the right to show movies for all special occasion liquor licenses, events like charity fundraisers and film festivals, even though they'd used SOLs for years without any problems. Minister Coleman was clearly not impressed. He told the media the next day he had instructed his staff to fix the problem, and it would take a few days. But as days turn to weeks, no one at his office seems to be recognizing that the situation is urgent. The Rio does not receive funding from government. It's a small business, and it's losing revenues every day from canceled film programming. And we, the community, should have the right to watch live events and movies in our neighborhood without the LCLB unreasonably interfering with that right. We are asking Minister Coleman, respectfully, to please act now to finally remove the restrictions on movies at the Rio, as the City of Vancouver asked the provincial government to do 5 months ago, and as he promised he would, and to have his staff take a close look at how LCLB Policy 1201 hurt other venues and events, and take steps to have it revoked. We know there are bigger problems to address at the LCLB, and that the minister is planning to introduce legislation that will allow alcohol at some movie screenings. And while we welcome that in due course, the situation at the Rio is separate and urgent. Lifting the ban so that the Rio can show movies without bar service is something the minister should reasonably be able to do with one phone call or the stroke of a pen and save the Rio today.
So that was kind of our activist video that we had out there as a call to everyone. So it's a bit outdated because that battle took 4 months. So you can imagine the stress that we were under and the process. Like when you see, he says, oh yes, great, let's save it, let's change the laws, and then you realize that the fix wasn't really the fix. That was very stressful. And sorry, there's a bunch of people talking and I'm kind of distracted by it. Sorry. It's hard for me to think while I'm hearing other people chat. Okay, sorry, where was I? Right, okay, so this video is a bit outdated because now, of course, after 4 months of fighting, we won. And we did something that I was told was impossible. When we first applied for our liquor license and we said, well, what would it take to be allowed to have a liquor license and show movies? My consultants all laughed, well, changing liquor laws is impossible. And I accepted that. I'm like, yeah, who could change a liquor law? But we did it. And it wasn't just me, it was the entire community and everybody that demanded it. We actually changed a liquor law that was created in 1920. This law, like I actually had some fun conversations with the bureaucrats when I was fighting this, because I would say, well, why aren't we allowed? And they would give me answers like, well, because it's dark. You can't have alcohol where it's dark. And I'd be like, wait a minute, every nightclub I know is dark. What are you talking about, you know? Rogers Arena was allowed to have alcohol. You could sit beside your kid and get drunk while you watch Aerosmith, you know? So none of these answers I was getting made any sense. And the only thing I've ever heard that makes any sense is that back in the day, in the 1920s, it was a class thing. They believed that theater was the wealthy people that could handle their alcohol, and movie theaters was lower class, and those people would get drunk and cause trouble. So clearly, 2012, which is many, many, many years later, things have changed a little, right? So to get the government to actually recognize that the laws should change was a shockingly, it was a real surprise to me that you had to fight so hard. The other thing that was surprising to me was their attitude. They were very vindictive. They got very personal. I was told by the media, they would tell me, the media would be interviewing me, and they'd say, the head of the LCLB says you've been harassing them, and it became this kind of almost paparazzi type situation where basically the government was trying to make it seem like this little business trying to stay alive was harassing them, and that was, that they had to protect themselves from harassment. Another thing I would notice too is they would really treat us like we were misbehaving children. Like, these are the laws, you follow them, and quit asking questions, And so, again, all of these things, all I was doing was trying to save my business. I was just trying, asking questions. None of it, my requests seemed unreasonable. So I would just keep, well, this doesn't make sense. The main thing that I learned after doing all of this is that the people in charge of the LCLB, and just so you know, after we won and changed the liquor laws, the head of the LCLB actually quit. That's another thing I feel very proud of. Seriously. And it is because we harassed them so much. And thank God we did. Because the people that were in charge of the LCLB at the time, I can't really speak for the people that are in charge of it now, but at the time had this attitude that this is the way it is. And if your business closes, we don't care. We shouldn't have to change anything. And when you look at who's doing this, there are a couple of people, they're bureaucrats that are living in Victoria, and sorry to say, but they don't get out much, okay? They're not out at nightclubs, they're not out at the theater, they're not out at the Rio, they've never been to the Rio. They're not people that are well educated in arts and culture. They're not even considering the connection that their decisions make on our entire province about arts and culture. So that's when I started to realize that's what really needs to change, is we can't have people, like, I'm not just bureaucrat bashing. I'm sure there's some people that work, that have these positions that mean to do well and are good at what they're doing. But I feel what happened with the LCLB is they were given so much power that they had the power without question. They didn't consider that we're actually all just grown adults with businesses that are trying to benefit the city, the province, and arts and culture, and why this punitive, sort of disrespectful attitude towards us. We're not teenagers that are trying to sneak drinks in the park. That's really the attitude they had towards us, that we were just delinquents and they were trying to control our delinquency, and that you as patrons are delinquents and must be controlled, and that you couldn't handle the responsibility of actually having a beer in a movie theater, which is so ludicrous, right? When we all look back now, because now you guys are having alcohol and seem to be pretty well behaved, for the most part. So yeah, I feel that one of the big changes that should happen is that we should have somebody who is educated in the arts and culture and entertainment industry, working with government. People who work with bureaucracy, they have a certain skill set and knowledge that is useful, that we need, but you can't expect them to be making decisions that affect the greater culture of our province. That's what leads to things like no fun city, and then people thinking Vancouver is not the world-class city that it could be, because we're just full of condos and we're full of things that lack culture. So it's not a little thing, what I'm talking about. Arts and culture in any city is a huge important thing, and if you ever wonder how important it is, just try to imagine a world without arts and culture. Try to imagine your day with no art, with no movies, no Netflix, no live shows, no poetry, no burlesque. We see a pretty dire life if we didn't have those things. So that's where we understand that it's extremely important, and it should be respected and taken seriously. We're not children because we want to have performances and we want to drink alcohol. So those are the changes that I feel would really make a huge difference. And I feel that further discussion needs to be made, because I know that even though we were able to change the liquor law to have alcohol and movies mix, there's still other people in the industry of making wine and various other people out there whose businesses are struggling because the LB hasn't gotten around to changing the laws for them. And to be honest, the fear is very real. It's not just people being lazy or they're just not fighters. When I was going through my fight, I kept asking other people to be a spokesperson, because I thought, well, they're going to get tired of me always fighting this. Why can't somebody else step in? And nobody wanted to, and it's because they were afraid that their business would get shut down, because they do have that power to shut you down. And the only reason why I was so loud and obnoxious, well, it's partly in my nature, but the only other reason why I was loud and obnoxious is because I had no option. It was do or die. We were going to get closed, so they really had no threat over. They couldn't hang any threats over me. They'd already done their worst, so that made me brave enough to fight the fight. And we have come a long way, and I'm really glad for that. But I feel that there's more to do that will foster the growth of arts and culture in our province and city. So thanks for listening.